In the suffocating darkness of April 1945, as the heavy artillery of the advancing Red Army shook the very foundations of Berlin, a terrified man sat alone in a concrete tomb. His hands, usually cold and calculating, were trembling violently as he wiped the sweat from his forehead. Surrendered to the shadows of a subterranean bunker, he was surrounded by wooden crates overflowing with heavy bars of solid gold, stolen family heirlooms, and priceless masterpieces torn from the walls of conquered Europe to the outside world. He was a powerful master of empire, a man who had helped orchestrate the theft of an entire continent's wealth. But in these final hours, the grand illusion of his power dissolved into pure, paralyzing panic. The terrifying realization clawed at his mind that the mountain of gold before him, worth billions of dollars, was nothing more than heavy, useless metal. It could not buy him a single day of life. It could not bribe the approaching soldiers, and could not secure a safe passage out of the ruins of his collapsing regime. As the sound of boots echoed closer and the inevitable end drew near, this man realized the ultimate, tragic truth of his absolute greed. He would die in the mud like a cornered animal, and the vast fortune he had sacrificed his humanity to acquire would be swallowed by the dark, silent earth, forgotten for generations. As the grand machinery of the Third Reich crumbled into ash in the spring of 1945, a dark and chaotic exodus began under the cover of dense fog and freezing mountain rain, transforming the majestic, snow-capped peaks of Bavarian and Austrian Alps into a desperate graveyard of absolute greed and suffocating paranoia. High-ranking officers, ruthless generals, and fanatic SS commandos who had spent years orchestrating the systematic looting of an entire continent suddenly stripped off their pristine, decorated uniforms, desperate to hide their identities as they morphed into terrified fugitives clawing through the mud. Behind them, heavy military convoys snaked along treacherous mountain passes, their wooden truck beds groaning under the weight of hundreds of millions of dollars in plundered Reichsbank gold bars, glittering jewelry, stolen museum masterpieces, and crates of counterfeit British banknotes from the infamous Operation Bernhard. The atmospheric tension was thick with the scent of burning gasoline and cold sweat as these men realized that the Allied pincers were closing in from both the east and the west, turning their supposed mountain sanctuary, the mythical Alpine fortress, into an inescapable trap. In this atmosphere of sheer hysteria, the psychological breakdown was absolute. Comrades who had stood side by side for years now looked at each other with eyes filled with venomous distrust, knowing that a single whispered word of betrayal to the advancing forces could buy their freedom, or that a bullet to back a partner's head would mean keeping the entire hidden fortune for themselves. Under the freezing waters of alpine lakes like the mysterious Lake Toplitz, soldiers worked frantically through the dead of night, their muscles burning and lungs gasping for air as they rolled heavy iron-bound crates off wooden boats, watching their stolen billions sink into the pitch-black abyss, lost in the deep, icy silt where they believed no one would ever dare to look. Others dragged massive iron boxes deep into the damp, echoing chambers of ancient salt mines like Altaussee and Merkers, sealing the entrances with heavy explosives that shook the very earth, forever burying the wealth of nations under millions of tons of cold, silent stone. The local villagers in these remote mountain regions watched in silent terror from behind closed curtains as black staff cars sped through their quiet streets in the middle of the night, followed by the muffled sounds of digging in the nearby forests. Any civilian who happened to wander too close or ask the wrong questions was executed on the spot, their bodies left in the woods as a brutal warning that even in defeat, the seeker of the gold was worth more than human life. We see the terrifying psychological torment of men like Ernst Kaltenbrunner, the feared chief of the security main office, who fled into the remote Austrian wilderness with a staggering hoard of gold coins, diamonds, and foreign currency hidden in heavy metal boxes. As he hid in a remote, snowbound mountain cabin high above the clouds, listening to howling wind and the distant rumble of American patrol vehicles, the sheer absurdity of his situation must have crushed his spirit. Surrounded by enough wealth to purchase entire cities, he was freezing to death, unable to light a fire for fear of revealing his position, and unable to buy a single hot meal or a safe passage across the border. The gold had become his anchor, a heavy, useless curse that pinned him to the mountain. When the Allied soldiers finally tracked him down, freezing, heavily armed, and defeated, the mountain of treasure he had desperately tried to bury in the snow did absolutely nothing to save him from his fate. This was not a strategic retreat. It was a desperate, animalistic scramble where the ultimate symbols of worldly power and wealth were reduced to dead weight, dragging these once feared monsters down into the dirt of history, proving to the world that in the final hour, no amount of stolen gold could ever buy a man a way out of his own inescapable destiny. To understand the true, horrifying depth of the treasure these men desperately tried to hide, one must look beyond the gleaming, polished bars of state central banks and peer directly into the pitch-black heart of an industrialized nightmare where wealth was systematically harvested from the dead. The gold that filled the heavy crates rotting in deep alpine lakes and dark mountain caverns was not just cold currency. It was a cursed, blood-stained legacy torn directly from the bodies of millions of innocent victims. High-ranking SS officers who lived in absolute luxury, sipping fine wine in isolated fortresses like Schloss laborers while overseeing the chaotic collapse of their empire, knew exactly where their fortunes had come from. They had watched as massive shipments arrive from camps like Buchenwald and Sachsenhausen, containing not just gold bars, but thousands of gold teeth fillings, delicate spectacles, pocket watches, and mountain-sized piles of wedding rings stripped from the cold fingers of families whose lives had been completely extinguished. When Allied soldiers later entered these damn caverns and ran their hands through crates overflowing with thousands of wedding bands, the sheer, crushing weight of this psychological horror became a physical reality. This was the dark, silent curse that began to slowly devour the minds of the fugitives as they fled into the wilderness. They were not just running with money. They were carrying the physical, metallic evidence of the greatest crime in human history. Every clink of a gold bar on the back of a bouncing military truck was a chilling scream from the past, a heavy, silent witness to their cruelty that they desperately needed to bury before the world caught up to them. But the desperation did not stop with the looting of dead men's rings. In their final, frantic bid to destabilize the global economy and fund their post-war escape routes, the regime initiated Operation Bernhard, a highly classified, chillingly precise counterfeiting project hidden away in the closed barracks of Sachsenhausen. Here, brilliant but captive printers, artists, and engravers, including brave men like Adolf Berger, were forced at gunpoint to produce near-flawless British 5-pound notes, featuring the elegant figure of Britannia, replicating the paper, the watermarks, and the serial numbers with such terrifying accuracy that even the Bank of England could barely tell them apart. Under the strict, merciless supervision of SS Major Bernhard Kruger and operatives like Alfred Naujoks, hundreds of millions of fake British pounds were printed, packed into crates, and shipped through secret networks to Alpine strongholds. This was a massive, shadow state counterfeiting machine designed to break the financial spine of the free world, run by men who knew that if they failed, a bullet to the back of the head awaited them. But as the Allied armies breached the borders and the inevitable end drew near, the grand counterfeit empire dissolved into absolute chaotic panic. The orders from Berlin were brutal and immediate. Destroy the evidence, execute the witnesses, and hide the money. The pristine courtyards of medieval castles and remote mountain valleys became scenes of pure madness as officers frantically tried to burn mountains of counterfeit bills. The black soot of burning paper filling the alpine air like ash from a volcanic eruption. The sky turned black with the remnants of a fake empire. When the fires proved too slow and the rumble of enemy tanks grew too loud, the guards turned on each other, their minds shattered by the looming threat of retribution. The crates of fake money, the fragile printing plates, and the looted gold of concentration camps were dragged to the shores of Lake Toplitz and dumped into the dark, freezing waters. The brave prisoners who had been marked for execution were saved only because the camp guards, consumed by their own animalistic panic, threw down their weapons and fled into the mountain forests, desperate to save their own skins. As the heavy wooden boxes sank into the silent depths of the lake, the men who had orchestrated this madness stood on the shore in cold, paralyzing silence, realizing that their brilliant schemes, their flawless forgeries, and their mountains of blood-soaked gold had ultimately bought them nothing but a one-way ticket to a dark, forgotten grave, leaving their useless fortunes to rot in the mud where no amount of money could ever wash away the blood. In the damp, silent depths of the earth, far beneath the peaceful fields of Merkers, Germany, the ultimate illusion of the regime's eternal wealth was shattered not by a grand battle, but by the hollow click of a flashlight. In April 1945, soldiers of the United States 90th Infantry Division, acting on a whispered tip from local civilians, descended hundreds of feet into the suffocating darkness of a massive salt mine. What they encountered deep within those subterranean salt tunnels was a heavy, reinforced steel vault door, standing as a silent sentinel in the cold dark. Denied entry, the engineers did not hesitate. They placed heavy explosive charges, blew a gaping hole through the brick wall beside the vault, and stepped into a chamber that defied human comprehension. As the dust cleared and the beams of their lights pierced the shadows, the soldiers gasped in absolute disbelief as subterranean cavern of staggering, almost mythical wealth. Stretched out before them were over 8,000 bags of gold bullion, billions of paper currency notes stacked in neat columns, and thousands of wooden crates containing priceless paintings by Rembrandt, Renoir, and Monet, all looted from the grandest museums of Europe and packed away like common coal. It was a literal underworld of stolen glory, a silent monument to a regime that had ransacked an entire continent only to leave its plunder rotting in the dark, guarded only by the quiet salt. Yet, while a massive haul of Merkers proved to the world that the rumors of hidden billions were entirely real, it also ignited a frantic, decades-long fever dream for the treasures that remained swallowed by the shadows of history. Chief among these ghosts was a legendary amber room, once hailed as the eighth wonder of the world, an entire chamber constructed of 6 tons of shimmering, glowing amber panels, backed with gold leaf and adorned with priceless mirrors. Gifted to the Russian Tsar and housed in the majestic Catherine Palace of Tsarskoye Selo, this magnificent masterpiece was systematically dismantled by invading forces, packed into dozens of heavy wooden crates, and shipped to the castle of Königsberg, where it was put on display for the High Command. But as the Allied bombs fell and the Red Army advanced, the amber room vanished into thin air, leaving behind a trail of mysterious deaths, forged maps, and empty promises that continue to haunt treasure hunters and historians to this day, a golden ghost whispering from the ruins of a forgotten empire. For generations, skeptics claimed that the era of finding lost billion-dollar treasures was over, that the earth had already surrendered all its secrets. But in the 21st century, history proved them spectacularly wrong. In November 2012, German tax investigators entered a modest, cluttered apartment in Munich belonging to an elderly, reclusive man named Cornelius Gerlit, the son of a notorious art dealer who had traded in looted masterpieces during the war. What they discovered behind stacks of rotting food and cheap canned goods was a breathtaking secret museum containing over 1,400 lost artworks by masters like Picasso, Matisse, Chagall, and Klee, worth an estimated $1 billion. For nearly 70 years, this fragile old man had lived in complete isolation, petrified that the world would discover the masterpieces hanging on his walls, a prisoner to his father's stolen legacy, proving that the curse of the looted gold still holds power in the modern age. These incredible modern discoveries send a chilling message to the world that beneath the surface of our quiet forests, inside deep mountain lakes, and behind the closed doors of ordinary apartments, the physical remnants of the world's greatest plunder are still waiting in the dark, proving that the frantic panic of those fleeing generals was not in vain, and that the ground we walk upon is still pregnant with the heavy, silent weight of history's most coveted secrets. As we look back at the shattered dreams of those fleeing generals and the useless fortunes they left to rot in the cold, silent earth, we are left with chilling, deeply personal question that echoes through the decades and challenges the very core of human morality. Today, deep in the ancient, whispering forests of Europe, or buried in the dark, icy silt of remote alpine lakes like the mysterious Toplitz, these cursed treasures still wait in the shadows, just inches beneath the soil, waiting for the modern world to stumble upon them. Every single year, thousands of ordinary enthusiasts, armed with metal detectors, old military diaries, and declassified maps of forgotten troop movements, venture into the quiet wilderness, driven by the intoxicating, dangerous promise of uncovering history's most closely guarded secrets. But let us step away from the abstract history and place you directly into the center of the psychological labyrinth. Imagine, just for a moment, that you are the one walking through those quiet, foggy woods on a cold autumn morning, far away from the eyes of society and the reach of law enforcement. The air is still. The only sound is the crunch of dry leaves beneath your boots, and your metal detector suddenly shrieks with a violent, deafening signal that indicates something massive is buried just beneath your feet. As you dig feverishly through the damp, cold earth and decaying roots, your shovel strikes a hard, metallic surface. You clear away the heavy clay to find a rusted, iron-bound chest, its heavy metal padlock still intact, and its wooden surface stamped with the chilling, faded insignias of a defeated, brutal regime. With your heart hammering against your ribs, you pry open the rotted wood, and there, gleaming in the soft morning light, lies a staggering fortune of solid gold bars, ancient jewelry, and precious gemstones, worth tens of millions of dollars. In that quiet, terrifyingly solitary moment, standing alone in the damp forest with a life-changing fortune at your feet, the psychological weight of your choice would crash down upon you with absolute, paralyzing force. Ethically and historically, you know the dark truth. This gold did not fall from the sky. It was systematically plundered from sovereign nations, stripped from the grandest museums, and torn from the hands of millions of innocent victims who lost everything in the horrors of war. A civilized society demands that you immediately contact the local authorities, report the location, and allow historians and archaeologists to return these artifacts to their rightful resting places, or display them in museums as a solemn, educational warning to future generations. But the dark, seductive whisper of human nature is a powerful, ancient force that is incredibly difficult to silence. You realize that if you report this discovery, the government will swiftly confiscate the site. A swarm of international lawyers and bureaucratic institutions will claim ownership, and you will likely be pushed aside, left with nothing but a brief mention in a local newspaper, a temporary handshake, and perhaps a tiny fraction of its worth after taxes. On the other hand, if you choose the path of absolute silence, you could quietly transport the treasure in the dead of night, melting down the gold and selling it off piece by piece over the years, ensuring that your family, your children, and your grandchildren will never have to worry about financial survival again. But that wealth would come with a silent, devastating price. You would spend the rest of your days looking over your shoulder, terrified of a knock at the door, living as a prisoner to your own golden secret, knowing that the very foundations of your comfortable life were built directly upon the ashes of history's greatest crime. Would you have the rare, unbreakable moral strength to surrender that chest to a modern state, or would you succumb to the quiet, intoxicating greed? Justify your silence by telling yourself that the past is dead and the living deserve to survive, keeping the blood-stained secret forever locked within your own heart? It is a profound psychological mirror, a question that forces us to look past our noble public declarations and confront the raw, unfiltered truth of what we would actually do if we were handed the keys to a kingdom built on ghosts. The echoes of that desperate, paranoid era still reverberate through the silent, misty valleys and the cold, uncharted depth of our world, serving as a solemn, chilling reminder that while the men who stole these immense fortunes have long since turned to dust, the dark secrets they tried so frantically to bury remain very much alive, sleeping in the shadows and waiting for those with the courage to seek them out. The frantic flight of the terrified high command, their useless gold, and their final moments of absolute panic prove that history is not just a collection of dates in a schoolbook, but a living, breathing labyrinth of hidden truths that continue to shape our modern reality. As we continue our relentless mission to peel back the heavy layers of silence, exposing classified operations, the forgotten conspiracies, and the buried mysteries that powerful forces desperately try to erase from human memory, we invite you to step into the dark with us and become an active partner in this ongoing investigation. If you felt the chilling weight of this historical tragedy and believe that the secrets of the past should never be forgotten, take a moment to subscribe to Hidden in Brazil, activate the notification bell, and join a dedicated community of seekers who refuse to let the truth remain buried in the mud of history. Share this deep investigation with those who crave the raw, unfiltered mysteries of our world. And let us know your thoughts on the ultimate fate of this lost gold in the comments below. Prepare yourself, for the shadows are already shifting, and our next investigation will take us even deeper into the heart of the world's most closely guarded secrets. Until then, keep your eyes open, watch the dark corners, and never stop questioning the history they wrote for us.